and we start with our friend Manny in Brooklyn. How you doing today?
Hi, Dr. Brown.
Hey there.
I saw a video by you on Isaiah chapter 7, and you were, answering the question why Isaiah did not use the word basula, and you gave, I think, like 3 reasons why not. One of them was this: you have lots of times in the Bible the word bacher and basula, or like young man, or like chosen man and maiden. Isn't the word bacher used lots of times to refer to an unmarried man, especially nowadays, and perhaps back then in biblical times?
Right. So Manny, for the sake of our listeners and viewers that aren't familiar with this, let me just give a second of background, okay? So
Sure.
Isaiah 7:14 says, "Hine hama harav yoledet ben v'karat shemo Immanuel," which most translations, especially Jewish translations, would render, look, the virgin is the young woman is pregnant and about to conceive, or is about to be pregnant and conceive, and will give birth to a child named Emmanuel. Just roughly. The key thing is that Jewish translators and many modern liberal translators say, look, Alma does not mean virgin, and therefore it's a mistranslation when the Septuagint translates it with Parthenos, and when Matthew uses Parthenos in Greek, and it's a misconception. It has nothing to do with virgin birth, has nothing to do with Jesus, and that the right word to use would be Betula, which means virgin. And my answer to that in terms of why Betula was not used is that, one, if Betula is not in a specific legal context dealing with virginity, it doesn't in and of itself mean virgin any more than Alma does. And that Alma has to do not with virginity, but with age and coming into to puberty. That's more what it ties in with. So it could be virginity or not, depending. But that also that you have, say, Joel 1:8, wail like a Betula who's mourning for the husband of her youth. That would suggest she's already married. You have other ancient Near Eastern usage of both that could go in either direction. So you would agree, Manny, that talking about Bachur today is really not relevant, like how the word is used in modern Hebrew or in contemporary rabbinic literature. That's really not an issue, right?
It's not so much an issue. It's just what I know, based on the terms used a lot. When someone's unmarried, they call him a bacher. I'm wondering if that was also the usage in biblical times too.
No, there's no evidence that I'm aware of in any lexicons that I've looked at, any word studies. And that's why you'll see many Jewish translations just say young men and young women. So, Bachurim, Ubetulot, it would just be young men and young women, as opposed to young men, young virgin men and young virgin women. In fact, there's really, think of it today. If you want to talk about a man who's a virgin, what's the single word that you would use in rabbinic law or in just modern Hebrew?
For a young man?
Yeah, a young man who's a man of any age who's a virgin. What specific word would you use for that?
In a specific, maybe bustle?
Right, but in other words, you don't have that in the Bible. You have Betula, you don't have Batul.
You don't have the word bustle in the Bible. No,
right. So basically, there wasn't an emphasis on male virginity the way there was on female virginity, and that's why you have all the laws about Betulim having to do with virginity. Let me say this: I do not believe for a moment that Alma, in and of itself, must be translated virgin. I would never argue that. I'm happy to translate with young woman of marriageable age, but presumably not pregnant. And in other words, some even, for example, what does Rashi say? Rashi says that the sign was that she was just an Alma and wasn't suitable for giving birth. So that's the thing. In other words, there's something striking about the prophecy and something that God himself is going to do as a sign, which Matthew then looks and sees the sign was the virgin giving birth. But in and of itself, unless you add a phrase with either Alma or Betula, an Alma or a Betula who never knew a man, it's not explicitly virgin. So I don't think when the prophecy was heard, everyone said, oh, there's going to be a virgin birth, because it could have even been a prophecy about a woman who is now an Alma, right? She's of marriageable age, but she's not married. and she's going to be married and she's going to be pregnant. It could have been that. So it's only through the lens of time that we see the full meaning of it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're going Joel chapter 1, verse 8.
Yeah.
You're definitely aware of many translators who say that, it's totally possible, or, that it could be a virgin who is legally married but didn't yet have sex.
Yes, a spouse, right.
You see in Deuteronomy 22, a person who doesn't find the word is basulim, or virginity of his wife, and, takes her to court, on the account of adultery. So, can't that necessarily also be virgin in that context as well?
It's possible. In other words, it is possible to argue that way, that she's espoused. So it's called husband because in Jewish law, he'd already be viewed as her husband. So she's mourning for him because they've never actually been married and she's still a virgin. It's possible to read it like that. Yeah. In other words, it's a good argument the other way, because so many times Betula does not specifically mean virgin, and in and of itself does not have to mean virgin. And we have other examples, you have goddesses called the virgin this or that, and they're promiscuous, so obviously it doesn't, in Ugaritic literature and things like that. Or, Babylon looked at as a Betula, and she's mourning the loss of her children. So again, you can't be dogmatic. My simple thing is, when someone says, if Isaiah clearly wanted to communicate virgin, he would have said Betula. I said, no, not necessarily. If he wanted to make it totally unambiguous, it would have been either an Alma or a Betula who never slept with a man or never knew a man. Then it would be unambiguous.
But when you admit it's less ambiguity if they would just use the word Betula, it's less ambiguous.
Well, possibly. But the fact that Septuagint translates it with Parthenos, which is a couple hundred years before the time of Jesus, and that Rashi, despite Christian polemics, 1,200 years after Septuagint, suggested an Alma was not expected to give birth or capable of giving birth, I would say that both are very strong in terms of unlikely words to be used for a married woman pregnant with a child.
But do you really think Rashi meant virgin birth, or do you think maybe he meant like a woman who couldn't give birth, like either Sarah or Rebecca, and that would be like some sort of miracle that way?
Oh, well, he certainly wasn't talking about a virgin birth. We agree with that Rashi did not believe in the virgin birth, right? But so. his word, if I remember, is riyah. It wasn't suitable. It wasn't expected or normal. So the question would be, because she's only an Alma. So here, I'll just read to you what he says, okay? And then, so some interpret that this is the sign that she was a young girl and incapable of giving birth. So that's how the most respected Rashi translator reads it, and that's on Chabad.org on their website. That's how they understand it. So there's something about her youthfulness, and that could be the argument that Alma would immediately point to a younger woman incapable of giving birth, and that's the better word to use. To me, it's a fair debate to have, but I think if we agree on this, sir, that it was not unambiguous either way, unless you factor in that there was something about the birth that was miraculous, because God tells Hezekiah, ask for, a sign above, below, whatever. And he says, I won't. He says, okay, then I'm going to give you a sign. And when you read various commentaries, the question is, well, what was the sign? What was the nature of the sign? So Manny in Brooklyn, just if you don't have Rashi memorized or in front of you, V'yesh Potrin, there are those who interpret Shezehaot, this is the sign, She'alma hayta, that she was an Alma, ve'ena ru'ya livaled, and not capable of giving birth. So just wanted to read that. Manny, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that drew you in to watch this video in the first place?
Well, actually, I was in a debate with a pastor regarding this passage, and I argued to him that the word virgin is, the word Alma does not mean virgin, and he insisted that the word Alma did mean virgin. So I tried to find him sources for, so that he wouldn't, be. And I found you, and I was glad you helped me.
All right, yeah. So I helped you part way because I still have my larger argument, and obviously just quoting these and your Hebrew pronunciation. So you're raised in a religious family.
Yeah.
And you're still from Jew today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you think Jesus was?
I don't know exactly. I'm more of the opinion that he was probably maybe a Shabtai Tzvi of his day.
Okay, so a charismatic false messiah of his day.
Perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I think I recently had this thought. I don't know. I mean, because obviously I don't accept the New Testament as historically accurate. I was thinking that I do see a little bit more violence towards the crucifixion. Like, Jesus turning over the tables on the Temple Mount, and Peter cutting off the ear of the people coming to arrest him. It seems to me maybe there was some conflict at the end, or there was some fear of rebellion, and maybe that's why he was killed.
Got it. Okay. Have you ever read my book, The Real Kosher Jesus?
No.
So I wrote that in response to my friend Rabbi Shmuley's book, Kosher Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And in that
I saw your debate with him.
Okay. So he argues, which one? Do you remember on that subject? Or a different one?
On the subject, it was, which one was I? It was in It's Supernatural, and I think it was
okay. We did that for Sit on TV. Got it. So you weren't one of those, because we've done many in New York City. But Shmuley wrote Kosher Jesus, and he tried to argue that Jesus was not a false Messiah, but a failed Messiah, and that he was a freedom fighter against Rome, and he died fighting for his people. So he wrote Kosher Jesus. I wrote Real Kosher Jesus in response, where I interact with that and have a chapter where I interact with the violence question. I don't know if you have a safe address where I could send it as a gift for you to read it. The reason I say safe address is many times when I'm interacting with a From Jew or someone in the Hasidic community, they say, well, I'd love to get your stuff, but you can't send it to me because I can't be caught with it. But
I was already caught with your stuff.
All right. So listen, if you like, when we're done talking, you stay on hold for a moment. We won't put you on any mailing list. It's not going to be added to our database. We just send it out as a gift. The only request is that once you're able to read it, that you give me a call and tell me what you thought afterwards. Is that okay? All right. Anything else you just want to raise while we're on the phone together?
Yeah. Well, I was wondering about the topic of Bacher, and that there's no real Hebrew word in the Bible for that term. Is that perhaps because Bacher, even though it kind of means chosen, it was also kind of used like it is today, like as Bethula is used today.
No, what I would suggest, Manny, if you'll really study it out, is that you'll see there was not a category for a virginal male, and that so, for example, a Bachur is speaking more about a state of age than a state of sexuality. For example, I'm quite sure that a 50-year-old man who somehow never married, or say Jeremiah, who God told never to marry in Jeremiah 16, I'm quite sure that at the age of 50, he would not have been called a Bachur, because even though he would, right. So that would indicate that. And what I do normally is I'll take it used to be my concordance at Mandelkern, and then after that, Evan Shoshan, a concordance of Tanakh. But now, of course, just with software. And what I'll do is I will just look at every single reference. Just, in other words, I don't know anything. I have no preconception. And I just read them, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200. And then you just read them in Hebrew, and then you start to put them in categories, and you see how they break down. And I feel quite confident that if you'll do that, you'll see that Bachur is not specifically used with reference to a virginal male, and hence a parallel to Betula. Rather, it's the way I'm saying it, that Bachur and Betula is just young men and young women.